Salam sejahtera, anda sedang menyaksikan Niaga AWANI bersama Sani dan Rozman, dan kita mulakan dengan perkembangan ringgit di mana ia dijangka naik minggu ini berikutan sentimen semakin baik disebabkan keputusan diambil oleh bank-bank pusat utama. Kenangan research berkata perubahan dasar yang mungkin dilakukan oleh Bank of Japan, BOJ dan jangkaan pasaran terhadap kenaikan kadar faedah oleh Rizab Persekutuan The Fed Amerika Syarikat dan data pekerjaan Amerika Syarikat yang lemah mungkin menjejaskan kenaikan dolar Amerika Syarikat minggu depan. Ia berkata mesyuarat oleh bank pusat seperti mesyuarat Jawatan Kuasa Pasaran Terbuka Persekutuan FOMC, BOJ dan mesyuarat terakhir Jawatan Kuasa Dasar Moneteri Bank Negara Malaysia semuanya dijadualkan berlangsung minggu ini. Ketua Ahli Ekonomi Bank Muamalat Malaysia Berhad, Muhammad Afzal Nizam Abdul Rashid berkata, beliau menjangka BNM mengekalkan kadar dasar semalaman pada 3%. Katanya, tumpuan minggu ini adalah pada mesyuarat FOMC dan mesyuarat Jawatan Kuasa Dasar Moneteri Bank Negara Malaysia. Beliau berkata pasaran akan menumpukan perhatian terhadap penilaian terkini oleh Fed mengenai prospek ekonomi dan melihat kepada ekonomi Amerika Syarikat diunjurkan akan berlaku kenaikan 25 mata asas minggu depan. Selain itu, pasaran juga akan terus berhati-hati memandangkan konflik Israel-Hamas yang berlanjutan. Justru, beliau berkata ringgit mungkin mengekalkan julat antara paras 4.77 dan 4.78. Sementara itu, bagi asas Jumaat hingga Jumaat, ringgit diniagakan rendah berbanding dolar Amerika Syarikat kepada 4.7750 atau 7800 daripada 4.7655 atau 7700 sebelumnya dalam persekitaran konflik di Timur Tengah dan sentimen berhati-hati menjelang pengumuman data ekonomi Amerika Syarikat. Dan sudah bersedia untuk mengulas lebih lanjut untuk bantu kita fahami bagaimanakah pergerakan ringgit menjelang iaitu mesyuarat MPC pada minggu ini. Saya memperkenalkan tetamu kita yang tidak lain dan bukan Dr. Muhammad Afzal Nizam Abdul Rashid, merupakan Ketua Ekonomi dan Kewangan Sosial Bank Muamalat Malaysia Berhad. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih Doktor kerana sudi meluangkan masa bersama kami untuk hari pertama minggu ini. Mungkin Doktor boleh kongsikan apakah pandangan Doktor tentang pergerakan ringgit pada minggu ini, Doktor?
Okey, saya jangkakan pergerakan ringgit itu masih lagi dalam keadaan yang berhati-hati. Seperti yang disebutkan tadi, tumpuan pada minggu ini adalah berkenaan dengan mesyuarat jawatan kuasa MPC di pihak Bank Negara dan juga di Federal Pempengaruh Committee di Amerika Syarikat. Yang mana kalau kita lihat rata-rata pandangan ataupun jangkaan yang dibuat oleh para penganalisis ekonomi meletakkan bahawa kadar faedah bagi kedua negara ini dijangkakan kekal. Kalau di Amerika Syarikat, kadar faedah ini juga kekal pada paras 5.5% dan di Malaysia kadar dasar semalaman juga akan berada pada paras 3%. Walau bagaimanapun, ialah situasi yang di luar sana masih lagi berada dalam keadaan yang begitu tidak menentu, maka penilaian terkini itu menjadi suatu tunggak kepada penentu arah ataupun hala tuju mata wang tamu dunia lah, terutamanya mata wang berkait rapat tentang dolar Amerika Syarikat, yang mana kita sedia maklum bahawa dolar Amerika Syarikat ini dianggap sebagai mata wang selamat ataupun safe haven currencies, dan apabila berlaku sebarang bentuk ketidakpastian, permintaan terhadap safe haven currencies ni akan dijangka akan terus kekal tinggi, dan ini akan memberi kesan kepada prestasi mata wang asing termasuk lila ringgit juga.
Selain daripada mesyuarat MPC, adakah antara aspek lain yang perlu kita teliti yang akan mempengaruhi pergerakan ringgit kita ini, Doktor?
Sudah pasti tentang berkenaan dengan perkembangan pergolakan di antara pihak Israel dan Hamas, dan bagaimana konflik tersebut akan memberi kesan kepada hubungan serantau. Dan kita dah melihat pihak United Nations Security Council telah pun mengutarakan usul untuk gencatan senjata, namun kita dapat lihat banyak negara-negara maju yang sama ada dia tidak berkecuali ataupun tidak setuju dengan usul tersebut. Ini menunjukkan bahawa terdapat satu pola yang agak boleh memberi kesan kepada sentimen pasaran, dan saya kira situasi inilah yang akan kerap dipantau bagi melihat hala tuju seperti yang saya sebutkan tadi, permintaan terhadap mata wang selamat iaitu dolar Amerika Syarikat. Namun kalau kita lihat data terkini berkenaan dengan inflasi di Amerika Syarikat, rata-rata masih lagi menunjukkan trend yang menurun ya. Terbaru terkini data seperti core PCE yang merupakan kadar inflasi yang menjadi sandaran bagi pihak Federal Reserve telah menunjukkan trend yang menurun ke paras 3.7% pada bulan September yang lalu jika dibandingkan dengan 3.8%. Jadi trend penurunan tersebut seharusnya akan memberi isyarat bahawa kenaikan kadar faedah itu mungkin agak kecil lah kebarangkaliannya atau mungkin akan kekal stabil pada tempoh yang terdekat ini.
Doktor, bercakap mengenai ringgit, bagaimana pula dengan pasaran? Apakah kesan ataupun konflik Israel-Hamas ini terhadap pasaran kita? Adakah mereka akan mengalami kejutan atau bagaimana?
Sudah pasti yang merisaukan kita adalah harga komoditi, terutamanya harga komoditi minyak. Dan kita dapat melihat harga komoditi minyak mentah dunia seperti Brent telah pun melangkaui $90 Amerika Syarikat pada satu masa tersebut. Jadi dia punya penelahan ataupun penelitiannya itu adakah dia akan memberi kesan kepada inflasi di peringkat global, dan ini merupakan suatu kebimbangan lah kerana sekiranya ia memberi kesan kepada inflasi, apakah pula akan terjadi kepada kadar faedah benchmark yang ditadbir oleh bank pusat utama dunia seperti di Federal Reserve, ECB dan sebagainya. Jadi ini yang perlu dipantau lah. Jadi dari segi impak kepada pasaran, seperti yang saya katakan tadi tu, kemeroapan tu akan menjadi suatu kebiasaan lah, dan kebiasaannya akan para pelabur akan mengambil pendekatan yang defensif, yang mana kalau dari segi kelas aset, kebiasaannya mereka akan membeli aset-aset yang mempunyai kadar risiko yang rendah seperti bond ataupun treasury bills lah, untuk kata tu melindung nilai kepada portfolio mereka.
Doktor, kita tahu kalau kita lihat antara data-data ekonomi yang terkini banyak menunjukkan prestasi positif, namun ringgit kita dapat lihat semakin positif. Namun kalau kita lihat dalam keadaan sekarang menjelang MPC, ringgit dalam keadaan berhati-hati. Dan pada pandangan doktor, apakah sektor ataupun kaunter yang perlu membuat persediaan terhadap pergolakan ringgit ketika ini?
Perubahan nilai ringgit sudah pasti dia mempunyai dua kesan. Satu, kepada para pengeksport sepatutnya adalah sesuatu yang positif lah, kerana nilai ekspor tersebut akan dilihat sebagai kompetitif. Manakala dari segi syarikat yang banyak mengimport dari segi bahan mentah sudah pasti akan mengalami kenaikan kos, dan sini terdapat keperluan bagi mereka ni untuk menjalankan aktiviti seperti lindung nilai lah ataupun hedging, untuk seolah-olah memberi insurans lah untuk melindung pendedahan mereka. Jadi saya rasa sektor seperti automotif, sektor-sektor yang banyak melibatkan pengimportan bahan mentah seperti sedikit terjejas akibat daripada kelembapan nilai ringgit ini. Terdapat dua perkara, mana-mana sektor yang terjejas, ada sektor yang juga mendapat manfaat. Kalau dari segi tourism pula, sudah pasti yang incoming tourism ni ataupun penerimaan pelancong daripada pelancong asing akan mungkin mendapat manfaat lah, kerana nilai ringgit kita lemah, dan ini akan menaikkan appeal kita sebagai sebuah negara destinasi pelancong. Dan sudah pasti sektor-sektor berkait rapat tentang sektor pelancongan seperti perhotelan dan juga berkait rapat tentang sektor penerbangan juga mungkin mendapat pemanfaat di situ. Jadi pemilihan ataupun penilaian itu perlu berhati-hatilah akibat daripada pergerakan nilai ringgit yang begitu meroak pada masa ini.
Doktor, kita tahu doktor ada berkongsikan mengatakan bahawa kadar dasar OPR ini dijangka untuk kekal kepada 3%. Dan sekiranya kekal ataupun berubah, apakah pandangan doktor ataupun the next step we should do?
Kalau kekal tu, itu memang jangkaan pada perang analisis ekonomi. Untuk naik tu saya kira agak sukar jugalah, kerana saya lihat data seperti kadar pertumbuhan pinjaman di peringkat industri perbankan telah pun merosot ke paras 4.2% pada bulan Ogos yang lalu. Kalau dibandingkan dengan bulan Disember, 5.7%. Jadi pertumbuhan dalam pembiayaan dalam sektor perbankan tu telah pun lembab. Jadi untuk menaikkan kadar faedah tu agak sukar. Jadi untuk turun tu buat masa tidaklah, tapi ia bergantung kepada prospek ekonomi pada masa akan datang. Jadi bagi rakyat Malaysia, saya rasa mungkin mereka perlu melihat kedudukan kewangan mereka, sama ada kedudukan kewangan mereka buat masa ini perlu kata tu penambahbaikan dan sebagainya. Maka seperti biasa yang selalu saya sebutkan, mungkin antara agensi yang perlu mereka berjumpa selain pada berjumpa dengan pihak bank adalah berjumpa dengan pihak AKPK lah untuk mendapat khidmat nasihat lebih baik lagi. Jadi saya sarankan rakyat Malaysia untuk terus-menerus kata tu memberi tumpuan kepada kedudukan kewangan mereka dan memerhatikan trend semasa dalam sektor ekonomi, terutama yang berkait rapat tentang kedudukan kewangan mereka sendiri.
Sudah tentu banyak lagi perkembangan yang akan kami bawakan sepanjang minggu ini dengan mesyuarat FOMC dan mesyuarat Jawatan Kuasa Dasar Monetary Bank Negara Malaysia minggu ini. Saya nak ucapkan sekali lagi terima kasih kepada tetamu kita Dr. Muhammad Azaniza Abdul Rashid, Ketua Ekonomi dan Kewangan Social Bank Muamalat Malaysia Berhad. Kami akan berhenti rehat seketika dan kembali selepas ini.
Bebaskan rambut saya. Ya, lakukannya. Walau apa pun anda lakukan, jangan risau. Sunset Baharu dengan vitamin C, minyak argan dan elastin dalam Active Infusion untuk rambut lembut mengurai dengan haruman berpanjangan. Bebaskan rambut cantik anda dengan Sunset Baharu.
Aku rasa kau bukan seorang je yang dia kacau kat uni ni.
You open-minded kan?
Saya nak awak rakam video untuk saya.
Saya janji saya takkan save.
Should I do further?
Must be something wrong somewhere kan?
Tak malu punya jantan.
Suka hati aku lah, Gobal.
Riot Rebel with a Cause. Stream episod baharu setiap Jumaat on demand dan Astro Premier.
Separuh akhir MFL Challenge Cup menyemarakkan semangat mereka. Keputusan luar jangkaan ketika Penang menentang PDRM.
1-2 menarik mendapatkan Bruno Suzuki.
Kuching City berwaspada terhadap kekuatan Kelantan United.
Dan kemudiannya melakukan satu blessing yang cukup baik.
Semangat kita, berjuang kita demi liga kita. MFL Challenge Cup di Astro Arena Bola dan Astro Go.
Asking the tough questions is what we do every day here on Astro AWANI. Catch me every weeknights at 10:30 p.m. across all AWANI platforms.
Untuk kita belajar dari episod ini supaya tidak berlaku lagi pada masa akan datang.
Kita perlu menjalankan dasar penguasaan ini secara berterusan.
Jadi adakah YB Yakin ini sebagai satu magnet kepada pelabur dan juga memberi keyakinan kepada rakyat?
Jadi kalau kita berjaya lakukan dengan baik, saya yakin sebenarnya kita akan dapat melihat laba itu naik mendadak.
Agenda AWANI setiap hari di Astro AWANI dan Astro Go.
Langkawi X Nomad Con 23 di bawah persidangan di Rantau Nomad Anjuran Jetpack Langkawi merupakan sebahagian daripada acara MDAC iaitu MDX 2023 di mana jurang antara kerja dan rekreasi menjadi kabur bertempat di tengah-tengah hijauan tropika yang subur dan geopark global Asia Tenggara pertama. Persidangan ini menawarkan tempat perlindungan inklusif buat nomad digital daripada pelbagai latar belakang. Sama ada anda seorang nomad berpengalaman atau baru mulakan perjalanan kerja jarak jauh, kecantikan pemandangan Langkawi akan menyegarkan dan memberi inspirasi kepada anda untuk menyiapkan kerja harian. Dan sudah bersedia untuk bantu kita lihat bagaimanakah ekosistem nomad digital di Malaysia ini, saya mempersilakan tetamu kita, Iskandar Ahmad Shah merupakan pengasas Jetpack Langkawi. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih Iskandar kerana sudi meluangkan masa bersama kami. Iskandar, boleh kongsikan pertama sekali bagaimanakah perkembangan terkini program nomad digital di Langkawi?
Hi Nina, thank you. Terima kasih pada AWANI. Thank you for the opportunity. This is our second day persiaran langsung di Langkawi di Bonton Local yang mana event venue untuk kedua hari. Kami selepas semalam kami telah di hosted oleh Langkawi Lada di Skycap menikmati pemandangan yang menghijau antara sepadan Malaysia dan juga Thailand daripada UNESCO geopark yang lebih 550 juta tahun. Dan moving forward lepas tu kita ada session oleh full session, sharing session oleh Divila, dipower oleh panel. Over to you.
Baik, kita tahu penganjuran Memantapkan 2-3 ni, apakah signifikannya? Siapa yang akan serta persidangan dan apakah aktiviti yang menanti penganjur di sana?
Untuk di sini kita menerima setakat ni Jaspek Langkawi telah menerima 52 lebih nomad dari 52 lebih negara seluruh dunia daripada Oktober 2017 hingga sekarang. Even though during the pandemic itself we have been welcoming a lot of people daripada Poland, daripada New Zealand, daripada US, daripada UK dan daripada hampir keseluruhan di seluruh Malaysia menikmati apa yang ada di Pulau Langkawi. Dan untuk hari ini kita ada pelbagai acara yang telah disusun untuk para pengunjung menikmati apa perkongsian daripada semua nomad-nomad digital yang datang dan terbang khas untuk ke Langkawi X atau Memantapkan 23.
Baik, kita dapat nampak banyak inisiatif ataupun usaha untuk tingkatkan ataupun memantapkan ekosistem nomad digital di Malaysia. Mungkin sebelum itu kita discuss lebih lanjut. Mungkin Iskandar boleh kongsikan apakah cabaran nomad digital kita di Malaysia ketika ini?
Kebanyakan untuk nomad digital ni kelebihannya adalah kerana terdapat beberapa kekurangan dari segi aktiviti dan juga offering yang berada di Malaysia. So untuk dengan tu kita berharap lebih banyak industry players yang mampu untuk menyumbang terus dan juga memberi kelebihan kepada as compared with other mighty giants of Chiang Mai dan juga Bali for example. Kita di Langkawi ni kita position ourselves as a productive island yang mana sekiranya you berada di Langkawi, Langkawi lebih memberikan tumpuan kepada productivity level. It enhances you punya productivity level. You boleh lebih fokus and building up whatever that you want to build up. Satu rahsia yang saya ingin berkongsi di sini, di Pulau Langkawi itself, kita menerima banyak syarikat-syarikat teknologi yang besar yang datang ke Langkawi dan build up dia punya teknologi ataupun new produk yang diberikan. And sudah semestinya because the nature of the product itself is in a secret, so they have to find a nice and fantastic location for them to be able to be focused and at the same time menikmati apa Langkawi that able and has to offer.
Jadi bagaimana peranan pengawal selia seperti MDEC dan Jabatan Immigration dapat membantu dalam memudah cara permohonan nomad digital ini?
We are from the very get-go, we are very much thankful to MDEC for this opportunity and supporting us from the very, very beginning in fighting against the other mighty digital nomadism destination. Kita ni memang always position ourselves as a David Langkawi versus the Goliath of Bali and Chiang Mai. But then again, itu tidak bermaksud that kita ketinggalan di belakang. Comparatively, whatever that we have on the Langkawi itself, sebagai contoh, jalur lebar internet yang laju, kita sebenarnya at par or even better than as compared with other places. And if you make your visibility and you talk about activities, kalau di Langkawi, you mandi air terjun sekarang, dalam masa 5 hingga 10 minit, you boleh enjoy laut. And this is something that positioning, the productivity level and the nature has to offer of Langkawi makes it more unique and has a lot of potential. And this pemudah cara dari Jabatan Immigration, kita juga amat berterima kasih sebab kebanyakan daripada nomad-nomad di Langkawi ada yang apply untuk dirantau and hopefully that they will be able to get their visas approved.
Iskandar, apa lagi yang perlu ditambah baik dalam ekosistem nomad digital di Malaysia selain daripada usaha yang Iskandar kongsikan tadi bahawa pemain industri perlu beri sumbangan yang lebih lagi kepada produktiviti dalam ekosistem digital nomad di Malaysia ini?
Right. Nina, we mentioned earlier pasal segala tenaga patut digembling bukan hanya dari segi pemain industri dan juga para aparatus kerajaan, for example, dia ni memerlukan juga synergistic and symbiotic correlation antara pihak swasta dan juga kerajaan. At this very moment di Langkawi X Nomadcon 23 ni, kita kalau Nina tengok di belakang adalah actually pelajar-pelajar daripada Langkawi Tourism Association, Langkawi Tourism Academy, yang mana kita menjemput diorang supaya memahami dapat sebenarnya style dan gaya hidup dan ability for you to travel everywhere around the world while being productive and also making Langkawi as one of the digital nomad hotspot.
Baik, sudah tentu kami berharap iaitu Nomadcon 2023 ni akan berjalan dengan lebih baik pada tahun ini. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih kepada Iskandar Mat Shah merupakan pengasas Jetpack Langkawi kerana bantu kami faham bagaimanakah untuk kita memantapkan lagi ekosistem digital nomad di Malaysia. Siapa sangka produk tempatan berasaskan kek dan pastry tempatan boleh menembusi ke peringkat antarabangsa. Meskipun perniagaan hanya bermula dari rumah sejak 2004, G&H Cake House kini boleh berbangga dengan kejayaan di kecapi kini, sebenarnya hanya berbekalkan minat dan produk makanan berkualiti tinggi. Perniagaan yang berpengkalan di serendah Selangor ini mula bertapak di sini oleh anak kepada pengasas sebenar G&H Cake House, Harif Ahmad. Dia berkongsi tanpa kegigihan ibunya menghasilkan produk-produk kek, pastry dan biskut yang berkualiti sejak 15 tahun lalu, ia seharusnya disusuli dengan perancangan perniagaan yang strategik.
Kita buat processing biskut, banyak-banyak produk pastry dan sebagainya lah. So actually kalau ikutkan dalam industri F&B ni boleh katakan hampir 15 tahun. Tapi yang betul-betul kami memecut ni dah orang kata sejak daripada tahun 2019. Kami dah mula menembusi pasaran luar negara.
Bukan sahaja berjaya memasuki pasaran negara serantau seperti Brunei, Singapura, Kemboja dan Filipina, bahkan produk mereka turut berjaya tembusi pasaran negara matahari terbit Jepun susulan permintaan tinggi daripada komuniti Muslim yang mahukan produk pastry yang halal. Namun menurutnya, ekoran peningkatan permintaan bantuan daripada sudut mesin bagi memudah cara operasi yang diberikan agensi kerajaan dan badan berkaitan amat membantu pengusaha kecil seperti mereka.
So bila kita makin berkembang, kita perlukan mesin. So lama-lama kami jadi semi-automate. Now kami dah hampir full automate. Semua mesin, semua dibantu oleh Jabatan Pertanian lah. Macam mesin depositor, mesin bakar, sehingga kan mesin masukkan kuih dalam, masukkan biskut dalam packaging tu pun kerajaan negeri Selangor dan juga Jabatan Pertanian bantu.
Berfikiran positif, Harif berkata meskipun produknya kelihatan suram dalam pasaran tempatan, namun perniagaannya yang dahulu dikenali sebagai Myzif Bakers yang kini berjaya memasuki syarikat rantaian runcit terkenal mampu mengubah persepsi orang ramai. Baginya, pengoperasian syarikat mereka mungkin berbeza yang mahu fokuskan terhadap kualiti dan mengukuhkan penjenamaan produk terlebih dahulu berbanding pemasaran konvensional.
Cara kami berkembang, kami banyak concentrate on pasaran ekspor. Bila kami dapat ekspor, then orang kata buka mata pemain-pemain industri dalam negara domestik. Jadi Aeon, Siumat dan juga Imat dah mula ambil produk daripada Myzif Bakers. So kami kena, orang kata lepas ni insya-Allah kami akan mulakan plan marketing konvensional dan juga digital lah untuk pasaran domestik insya-Allah.
Atas permintaan ramai, projek Bapak-Bapak kembali.
Pakai warren kau kena Australia tu.
Kini mereka ke Australia dengan cabaran baru.
Belum cuba, belum try. Sudah.
Adakah GeForce masih alasan mereka?
Jangan duduk habis. Nak bangun 2 hari. Sudahlah, auta banyak.
Travel awak projek Bapak-Bapak musim 2. Di Astro Warna dan Astro Go.
Di sini, tiada keputusan boleh diramal. Fulham bersedia untuk menekan pelawat mereka. Magpies mampu mengejutkan The Gunners. London Derby makin hangat dengan kembalinya Pochettino. Pertembungan epik yang dinanti-nantikan. Premier League secara langsung dalam 4K HDR hanya di Astro.
Untuk kita belajar dari episod ini supaya tidak berlaku lagi pada masa akan datang.
Kita perlu menjalankan dasar penguasaan ini secara berterusan.
Jadi adakah YB Yakin ini sebagai satu magnet kepada pelabur dan juga memberi keyakinan kepada rakyat?
Jadi kalau kita berjaya lakukan dengan baik, saya yakin sebenarnya kita akan dapat melihat laba itu naik mendadak.
Agenda Awani setiap hari di Astro Awani dan Astro Go.
Thanks for joining me. We shall talk about education, but not in the traditional sense. We need to understand a little bit more about the requirements of the real-world market data versus what is on offer right now. Here to discuss this and more is a very good friend of mine, childhood friend of mine actually, Jagdish Singh Malhi, the Director of Student Recruitment and Marketing at University of Nottingham, Malaysia. Jag, thanks again for coming over. This is our first time meeting, I don't know, for so many years. Yep. There's a lot that needs to be unpacked, but first things first, what is the education landscape looking like these days? Do you feel that we are servicing the requirements of what is needed in the marketplace and also trying to fulfill the aspirations and wants of our young students right now?
Thanks, Ibrahim. It's a pleasure to be here. Indeed, it's been a long time. So to answer your question, I think in the sector we're seeing a very good rebound post-COVID. You know, I think many universities across that 2 to 3 years suffered a little bit, but we're seeing very strong growth, and even for us in Nottingham, this year has been very encouraging across domestic and international recruitment. So that's great. In serving the needs of what the young people are looking for, I think there's a lot of news about what those changing views are around, the future of work and what kind of roles they want to get into. But when we speak to a lot of the young people who come and enroll at the university, I think there's a very clear sense that, there are still a lot of students who are very clear about what they want to achieve. Okay. And typically we will see, 3 different groups of students, right? The first group would be, I know what I want to do. I know how I'm going to get there. And I just want to apply. Okay. Or tell me a bit more about the other things. Yeah. Right? The next group will be, I know 1 or 2 roles that I might be interested in, right? And I'm not so sure what degrees will get me there. And this is the largest group, right? So we provide a lot of counseling and advice about what might be suitable for them, right? The last group, which is quite small, is I'm really not sure what I want to do. I'm really lost. Sometimes you've read so much online that you're having paralysis by analysis, right? Yeah. There's just so much. And that's the case, Ibrahim. If you go online and you search, what's the best engineering degree, you start at 10 p.m., next thing you know, it's 3 a.m.
It's a rabbit hole that you can't get out of.
It's a rabbit hole, right? Yeah. So our job is also to provide that expert advice, to guide them based on what they need, what they're looking for, right? That's really important.
I'm a traditionalist, I'm a dad, I want all my children to have a degree, but I'm also a realist. If it doesn't take 4 years out of my children's life away and they can start on the get-go and learn on the go and get specialization along the way, and the professional certifications, a lot of them do not require a bachelor's, why would we still go with this Asian parent pathway of, oh, you must have a degree? Not just that, lawyer, engineer, doctor. Otherwise, you're a failure. How do we fit a traditionalist worldview and a realist worldview? Is it even compatible?
Yeah, and that's a question a lot of parents, or in this case students, have these days. We've seen numerous reports in Malaysia where government is saying, oh, we've done the survey, and a lot of students, or 70%, are saying after SPM we don't want to continue into higher education. Interestingly, if you look around the globe, it's the same challenge the US has. For example, the number of enrollments at universities in America has dropped significantly, but I think in the US they have a very different model for funding education, and you always talk about debt in that case, right? In Malaysia it's a little different. Now there are a few things to unpack here. Number one is we see a lot more content online from big names or big companies where I think in many cases what was said has probably been sensationalized. One line or one sentence sensationalized to say, oh, degrees are no longer relevant, no longer needed. I would say the question for you as a parent or for a student is, okay, figure out what you want to do in the next 5 to 10 years. And then work backwards and look at what route is going to get you there, right? So for some roles in computer science, for programming, it is arguable, or there are some cases, earlier we were talking about what is the exception versus the norm. There are some cases where, yes, Google has said for certain roles, in lieu of a degree or other certification, we will look at your experience. So they are probably referring to those 1 or 2 people who win the hackathons every year.
Okay.
Right? The top 1%.
Yeah.
Right? We're talking about the top, the best of the best.
Innately terror.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you are that, and you can get to that level, sure, of course, a lot of companies are going to be saying, Ibrahim.
Yeah, but that's 99% of the rest of us.
Yeah.
So how do we cater for that?
Yeah.
A lot of people think that they are 1%, but let's be frank here. They're not.
Yeah.
So the 99% of us, how do we cater for them then?
So I think the key thing is, when you talk about higher education, now Malaysia, we are really blessed. Why? If you look around the region, many countries in Asia today cannot provide enough seats at university for their people, which is why a lot of students in these countries have to go abroad. There are not enough seats locally. But in Malaysia, we have choice. We have options, right? Even public universities are opening their private pathways. So like for example, now, for certain degrees, you can apply as a private candidate. Fees are still affordable. There's a range of private universities with different levels of fees, right? So in Malaysia, the great thing is we have options. Second thing is we have funding from the government. You've got PTPTN, you've got so many scholarships. You can use your EPF account too. So there are so many ways for parents to also fund their education. So I would say at the moment, Malaysians, we are very blessed because you don't have the financial challenges most of the time for most families. Of course, when we go into the B40, that's going to be then a different discussion, right? How do we increase participation? How do we help these students from disadvantaged backgrounds? I'm talking for the average middle-class family compared to many countries in the world, in that context, right? We have the options, we have the funding, right? So access to a higher education is not a problem in Malaysia. You can get it, right? But I think the question now is what's being sensationalized is, oh, degrees are no longer required, or what's the point of going to university? And if you go online, preparing for this discussion, a week back, so I have my views from my experience about why higher education is important. And as you probably know, I didn't start my career in higher education, right? So I started in financial services and came into higher education. And so I wouldn't, I would say to parents, look, yes, this is my role, but I feel very proud about where I work because I know what we're doing, right? The quality we are delivering at the value, and we can come to that later. So back to that point, it's really about then being very clear about what you want to do next, okay? And if you're unclear yet, then figure that out first, right? Because if you want to go into the gig economy, okay, let's take an example of ride sharing, or we have big companies now in Malaysia, in the world. What happens when it's a monopoly? So now your commission might be X% that the company takes from you, right? And you're earning X amount. When this company becomes a monopoly and they increase the commission, what are you going to do? Is there anything you can do?
Nothing much.
So what is your backup plan, right? If you think you're 17 and you're like, look, when we were in university, there were so many interesting things to do. A lot of people wanted to quit university and go and sell Lambakan. You remember that, right? Yeah, my friend is driving a BMW, selling these magic lamps, earning 10,000 a month.
Yeah,
that was the influencer of the
2000s. Yeah,
right. So the influencer today, now influencers have been around our whole lives. The difference is the internet has supercharged that one-to-many voice. Yeah. I can be an influencer. You are already an influencer, right? Yeah. So what has changed in the last 10 to 15 years is this ability for anyone with a phone going like that, is they have a voice. Some people, again, top 1% or maybe 10%, have done really well. And we look at them and think that could be me, right? So I'm tempted to go and try it. Now, what is the opportunity cost? So you're now giving up that you have to decide, do I want to spend 5 years trying to be an influencer and trying to make it? Or do I want to go and get a degree? Or I would say, I'm not here to say that you should just go to university and get a degree. But if you're not going to do that, what are you going to do? Be very clear on that, right? You can, if it's not a degree, do you want to go and get a professional certification, go into TVET? If you're going to be a plumber or a mechanic or something else, but get certified, get a skill that you can get good at and get paid for, right? And there are many other reasons to get a degree. If you want to migrate, you see the world is so global today, right? We talk, you know, many countries will term it as brain drain, right? But if you read up about the trends, right? I was reading a very interesting book last week about the world in 2050, okay? So world in 2050, one of it, they talk about the migration of people all over the world. So jobs are global, crossing boundaries is so much easier, right? And so when you apply for a job overseas, or if you want to move for a different opportunity, right? What is one of the questions that they ask you?
What degree
what's your higher? What's your degrees? Forget about going overseas. Apply for a bank loan now.
But is that question going to change by 2050? Instead of that question of what degree do you have or what you're trained at or which school do you go to, it's more of how many followers do you have? Oh, you have 1.6 million followers. Come, I'll hire you.
Yeah.
Will that be the question? That's the thinking that I have for my kids.
Yeah, I think, and that's a good question, right? What's going to change over time? So, of course, hindsight is going to be 2020. Who knows? But I would think that for many governments, for many organizations, the path to least resistance to determine quality, and we are creatures of habit. So let me turn it around and ask you, how do you determine quality? You want to go to a new restaurant, what do? We go on Google.
TripAdvisor, whatever lah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to determine quality, right?
Not anything else. It's just a starting point.
It's just a starting point.
By the way, this is not a rhetorical question. Just last week, my youngest, in terms of celebrating, we wanted crab. I Googled chili crab, PJ.
Yeah.
There are 3 whatever options there.
Yeah.
I just looked at the highest rating. I went for the second option, for instance, because of whatever. Just to test.
Yeah.
And I had no point of data, I suppose, right? Is that the way people are going to think for CVs as well? And of course, with CVs, what is inside that CV? Is it, oh, you graduated from Russell's Group or Ivy League, or is it, okay, you're high on IG and not so much on TikTok, and you're nothing on Twitter. Okay, these are the kind of considerations I have for you. And this guy is high on Twitter, or the kind of engagement. Okay, you may have only 10,000, but the people that follow you, that 10,000. So what are the considerations? That is the one that is keeping me awake at night.
I think for many roles, I don't think your social media following for a graduate entry role, or for many roles, I don't think your social media following is going to be a determining factor for whether you get offered a job.
Today, but
today.
Is 20 years from now going to be different?
So, okay, let's pick a job. Doctor, lawyer, engineer. Okay, so if you were going to work, okay, let's say you're an engineer, now you're hiring someone. In 20 years, how would having, say, 10 million followers,
Nothing.
How would it matter? You know what I mean?
Doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
You need an engineering graduate.
Yeah. But if I'm hiring someone to work in media,
okay.
If I want Ibrahim Sani, who has this following, if I want to get Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah, I want to get Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
So if you want to get Joe Rogan, then immediately it's like, yes, because...
So people transpose critical vocations with that of, say, marketing and media and mass communications and the like.
Yeah.
The appeal now is that when we were young, we were aspiring to be engineers, lawyers. I had a personal aspiration of trying to be an accountant, which I did. You know, I graduated, I got a qualification, worked in a bank, and then I decided, you know what, maybe I need to go into finance, media. All right, so that's how I charted a career out of myself. But I was clear on what I wanted to be. Do kids these days have that kind of aspirations? Do you know, between my 3 kids, maybe because they're bored of seeing me on TV every day, they have already selected their vocation.
Yeah.
My eldest wants to be something along the lines of finance. My boy wants to be a doctor. My youngest wants to be an architect or a designer. Not that far off if you think about it. And we were talking our son out of it. His mom was like, Mommy's a doctor. Mommy has been studying for 7 years for a degree MBBS and then another 5 years punishing myself for a specialization in psychiatry. I have been crying the whole time. This is the life of a doctor. You see me. Why do you still want to be a doctor? He's like, because I want to help people. It's clear. This is the life that it's fine. So what if it's a struggling group? So that is of course, things change. He's an 11-year-old boy. Just last month he wants to be Lionel Messi. So what I'm trying to say is, as long as kids aspire to a particular vocation that is professionally driven, I get that. But what about the many of us? And I'm not just talking about T20, M40, B40. I'm talking about the many kids these days that look at TikTok 24/7, that looks at IG and has mental health issues. We have seen all the studies that have shown that mental health issues are driving up based on IG usage. Do they have that kind of aspiration? So is it down to the folks like you and me that needs to impress upon them and their parents to start thinking about a lifelong career instead of just getting paid doing, product endorsements?
That's a fantastic question. Something that we all grapple with as parents, as our roles in what we do at work as well. So, they say, it takes a village to raise a kid, and I know that's a very common phrase that's used, but I think in this case that's really apt, right? So what is the role of parents? What role do we play, right? How involved and engaged are we with our children? What is the role of schools, of government, of other people that interact with our children? Because a lot of what comes out in the media shapes perception and interest. So you look at the rise in demand for courses in healthcare, right? After COVID, right? So there's this interesting study that looked at, because of COVID, and you saw this importance of frontliners and healthcare. They tied that to the increased applications into like medical, MBBS, that sort of thing. I think the point I'm trying to make here, Ibrahim, is we are easily influenced, right? Which is why there's always a role for influencers, and so the question for us is to be aware of what we are seeing in the media. It's a way for you to be informed, but also we need to be very clear on, what are the other sources of information. And it's not, I'm not linking that to what the media is saying, but what I'm saying is, how do we develop our critical thinking skills, our ability to think through what are all the different options, and how do we want to get there? So back to your question of, what is our role to help the future generation? I think number one is from the parents, as parents, we need to play that role. But number two, I think we need more people coming out and talking about, well, I went to university and this has been my experience. Of course, we wouldn't know what our experience could have been if we didn't go to university,
of course,
and did something else, right? But it is just worrying that there are so many people with influence, mostly in the West, but that is the content we consume, right? But a lot of people in the West are talking about, a degree is dead, you don't need it anymore, university, etc., etc., etc. But I think we have to be very clear. The reason there's a lot of unhappiness in, say, in the US is because of the burden of their education cost, right? So you can go to a state college that will probably cost you about $60,000, which dollar for dollar maybe not too bad. But if you go to private education, you're talking 150, 200,000.
Yeah.
US
even
dollars,
higher if you go into a...
So it's really about that. But let me share with you, we are still really, really pleased to see that I can only tell you about what we see from our end, right? There is still very strong demand. A lot of students are coming to us to talk about their future, their aspirations, and a lot of the discussions that we have, it always starts with, what is your aim?
They don't have it, right? Especially that 3 buckets that you mentioned, the last bucket. I don't even understand that question. Sorry, I understand that question, but I don't know the answer. I'm not even pretending wanting to know the answer.
So we can take them through a process of discovery, right? You can do a personality test, you can take a career test. There are the 10 answer ha questions, which I think that's not really going to help you. But we need to put some time in to do the, something more rigorous, right? And you get a professional to sit down with you and take you through that. And so from there, you sort of think about, okay, could this be something that I might be interested in? The one thing that we are also thinking about, actually, so there's a lot of interest in helping students discover what's going to be exciting for them, right? And there are some plans for next year, which I can't share at this point, but I'm quite excited about some of the things we are thinking about next year. Because, Ibrahim, there's a lot of opportunities around thinking about, as a university, we have all these partners. Right? We have partners in industry. Okay. Partners in industry need talent. They want the best talent. It's a war for talent, right? Because we know today the economy is not competing just on product or service, but very strong is that talent being able to deliver for what you need, right? So what can a university do to provide students or even students still in school with a sort of work-like experience or some exposure to what the roles are like, right? So as a university, what role can we play to leverage our partnerships with industry to provide you, the student, at a younger age, right? Form 3, Form 4, Form 5, with some idea already of maybe what are some of the different roles and what can you do. So I guess the easiest way to say it would be, what would a Kidzania for teens look like? Or a Kidzania for young adults look like?
And that is what universities like Nottingham is offering.
And I think that's a big opportunity, right? Because why should Kidzania just be for kids?
Quick one, social visit pass for international students and Malaysian visa liberalisation plan. We've heard the Prime Minister, PMX, recently announced the introduction of a long-term social visit pass for international students. This is aimed at addressing the need for skilled labour in Malaysia. How do you foresee this policy impacting international student enrolment in your university and universities across the country? And what strategies do you think that you're considering to actually capture this particular potential influx of international students?
I think that was, it was really pleasing to read that in PMX announcement. We are waiting for the official announcement, which will come
and of course the details that comes along with it.
So, but if I were to speculate, I think immediately, of course, this is fantastic news, not just for the sector, not just for higher education, but for all the other interdependent sectors for the country.
Like what?
So, think about it. Would you agree that a international student coming here for 3 to 4 years to study, I would say that is a long-term tourist in some ways. Right? Think about it. You have one extra person coming in, paying rent, spending on food,
Grab,
everything, right? Your retail, clothes, this and that. So what is the impact of one additional student coming in for 3 to 4 years?
For the economic growth of the country.
What is that multiplying effect, right? Now, the government wants 250,000 students by 2025. Okay. So, if you have these students coming in, it's not only great for higher education, it's great for the property sector. We have an overhang of properties, right? Rentals are a big problem. You need people to fill it up, right? It's gonna revitalize our local economy. Your machi, your mama, everybody's gonna benefit, right? So that's that big benefit there. Now, for universities, in Malaysia, we have, as I said earlier, a lot of choice. And I think for many Malaysian universities, we do want to attract more international students to diversify your tuition fee collection. But there's so many other benefits for students, right? It's about building a global network, Like when I was in university, I had friends from different countries. We are still in touch, right? So today, if I fly to Oman, or Bangladesh or Pakistan,
it's like that,
right? That's
even with me,
right?
Phone call away.
So, and after some years in the professional life, we know that these networks are so important, right? So that's one of the things we talk about at the University of Nottingham.
That I didn't see before, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Only after working.
Only after, right? In Malaysia, colloquially, we'll say, you got cable or not, right?
But,
but these are the cables that you build
across
around the world, right? And across your lifetime. And it's these 4 years that you spend with someone, right? Playing sports, going to class, going through your ups and downs. That's where the bond builds, and it's for life, right? So to me, it is, when I look at the economic impact, it is across the country. Then the other thing to look at is, all right, if we are moving into aging nation status and super aging by 2030, if we need more manpower, right, where is it going to come from? Then how are we going to decide who to bring in? Because now we have a lot of blue-collar workers, right? If you want the white collars in, then I would think one of the ways to do that is you already have a student who's coming here for 3 to 4 years. They understand how the country works. They understand the culture, the norms. They know how to, they are already slightly integrated, right? Know how to order Milo ice, teh tarik, they get it, right? And if you can then flow them into graduate entry roles, graduate roles, then, you know, that's going to be another way for you to get manpower. Now, why is that important? For companies who are investing, deciding where to invest, open up regional HQs, the key thing they always look at is access to talent.
Number one.
Right? So Malaysia, we also have this goal to produce more high-income jobs. We want to upskill, we want to have high-tech talent and all of that. Now, of course, that dimension starts with, all right, what are we doing for Malaysians, right? And how much can we grow that?
Yeah.
But then it's also about if we need more, then where are we going to get it? How are we going to get it? What is that pathway to decide who comes in and how, right?
So activities and initiatives like this social visit pass for international students and visa liberalization plan is part of that, part and parcel of that, in trying to boost up the requirements.
I would think so, but I think it's hard to tell right now because we don't have the full details, and PMX did not also, you know, speak too much about why.
Yeah, it's a touch and go moment.
It's like, by the way, you know, we are doing this. But this is something, just to give you some background, that the sector, you know, all of us have been in long discussions with the government about. So it is something that I think, you know, has gone through a lot of thinking, weighing the pros and cons, and we have a lot of reference points with other countries, right? Because when you look at global, let me tell you a bit more about higher education destinations, okay? So, Tier 1 destination, Tier 1 meaning in, you know, across the globe, where do people want to go to? Where do they go to for higher education, right? UK, US, Canada, Australia. This would be your big four. Then in Tier 2, I would say you've got Singapore, Malaysia, Dubai. Now, Malaysia versus Singapore and Dubai, we are a lot more cost effective. Very multicultural. Of course, Singapore and Dubai also very multicultural. But I think here, in terms of that integration into culture for so long, we've already been very multicultural for so long, right? Like Dubai, for example, is, I don't know, 80% South Asian or something, right? So it's very different in terms of that makeup. So when we look at the reasons international students come to Malaysia, the first thing is proximity. If you're living anywhere in Asia, right, 3-4 hours, you're here. Connectivity is so easy, right? We have some of the best infrastructure in the world. Really. For Malaysians who complain all the time, they really need to travel and look around.
Still, you know.
Right? Because honestly, I'm very blessed in my role. I get to speak with families from all over the world. But the thing that hits me every time when I travel is we actually have it so good in Malaysia, right? So we have the infrastructure. We have locals are actually very welcoming and friendly to international students, and that's important. You don't want to go to a country where you don't feel welcome.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's also very important.
Yeah.
So with all of this, Ibrahim, the only thing that has been lacking for us to really become a global hub is this, what we usually call a post-study work visa, right? Because for these international students, they want to go and study abroad and then hopefully get a role. And you guess what? From there, it doesn't mean they're going to stay here forever as well, right? Again, we go back to how roles are so global.
Yeah.
Right?
And therefore, they will be able... So you're very optimistic about this?
So I'm optimistic because I think there's going to be a huge spillover effect on the broader economy. So it's not a higher education thing, but it's a question that we need to go further up and say, for each additional person spending 3 to 4 years here, what is the economic impact? When it comes to employment, it's really up to the employer, whether they're going to hire, right? So it doesn't mean that you have the visa, that you're automatically going to...
Yeah, but this is, of course, an overall positive, I suppose, net positive for the economy.
Very positive, I think so, yeah.
That was our conversation with Jagdish Singh Malhi, the Director of Marketing as well as Student Recruitment at University of Nottingham, Malaysia. Do check them out. But for now, my name is Ibrahim. Sani. Catch you in the next one.
Sebagai seorang usahawan atau pengusaha bisnes kecil dan sederhana, anda mesti sentiasa